So we've come to the moment of truth, finally, for Suffolk County in the Long Island serial killer case. For years, 9 years, the Suffolk County Police Department has covered up the facts in this investigation. They have done an inadequate and negligent job of trying to trace down the killer or killers. Since I began a lawsuit to enable me to investigate the facts of this case, I asked for the tapes, the 911 tapes, which contain Shannon Gilbert's last words for 21 minutes, and also contain the statements by the people whose doors she knocked on, and the statement by the Joseph Brewer, who she was with that night. The police have adamantly refused to give up those 911 tapes for 9 years. I've been fighting them alone ever since in order to obtain those tapes for me, for the investigation, so that the family of Shannon Gilbert can hear their sister's last words, and also so that this investigation can be made public and go forward. The police told the public that Shannon Gilbert was not murdered, and that instead Shannon Gilbert's disappearance was because of natural causes, and therefore they said Shannon Gilbert was not part of their active investigation, in which event we should have been given those tapes, but we weren't. In court, the police told the opposite story. And in court, in my case, the police investigating detective swore under oath that it was an active criminal investigation, and they refused to give up the tapes because of that. Well, you can't have it both ways, and you can't lie to a court, especially if you are a public official. And that's what's happened again and again and again throughout the years. Well, I haven't given up. I've continued to fight. I subpoenaed those records. I subpoenaed the tapes. And the police fought me relentlessly in court. Finally, Justice Berland of the State Supreme Court ordered them to give me the tapes over a year ago. Instead, they defied the court, and they instead appealed the case. That's why we're really here today, because that case is to be decided, that appeal, the county's appeal, is to be decided on January 21st of this year. They know they're about to lose, and this is the only reason they have called a press conference here today to tell you and the public that they are going to finally release information to the public. You know what that information is? It's very likely they're going to play the tapes for you today. And indeed they should. They said that there's some kind of new initiative, is the word they use, that they're going to engage in to release information to the public. But the public doesn't have any interest in anything at this moment but the tapes. That's what should be released. And so I suspect strongly that that's what you're going to encounter when you go in there at 1 o'clock. However, if they don't release the tapes, when they claim they're engaging in a new initiative to share information regarding Long Island serial killer with the public, then indeed the public will need to know and should demand in the strongest terms that they release the only information that is of any importance at this stage, and that would be the 911 tapes. So I fought this case alone, and we've boxed the police in. They know very well that they have to give up those tapes. They're going to lose that case. And indeed, there's a Netflix movie coming out in early February which also puts them on the spot. So they can't win this battle, and what they really need to do is give it up, do the right thing, clear out the old dead wood that's been investigating this case for 9 years in the police department put in new people with new voices and new minds and share the information with me and with the public. I should point out to you that when Dr. Michael Baden, the famous Dr. Michael Baden, with me performed the autopsy on Shannon's bones several years ago and concluded that the hyoid bone in Shannon's neck, just like the hyoid bone in Mr. Epstein's neck, was broken, and that break was consistent with homicide. When I and Dr. Baden announced that to the public, I received a call from the Chief Detective of Suffolk County Homicide, Lieutenant Byra, and Byra told me that he wanted the police department to work with me. I agreed. I called him back several times, and he never worked with me. They never worked with me once.
Did they ever review the private autopsy?
They never reviewed the private autopsy that we did, and in fact, I and my ex-police homicide detective here, Bill Mahoney, went to the Suffolk County Police with a great binder of evidence that we had gathered throughout this case. Very strong evidence, very powerful evidence, and many witnesses as well that the police never investigated their statements. We presented it to the police department, and they refused to look at it. They would not even look at it. Let me address another point. This cover-up has taken place starting when Chief Jimmy Burke, before he was chief, was one of the lead detectives for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. He had a lot to say, Burke had a lot to say about this investigation when Shannon first disappeared. And after that, he became, only 8 days, I believe, after she was found, in December of 2011, Jimmy Burke became appointed as the chief of police before a new commissioner was even appointed. And from that day forward, the police department, under his control and his supervision, this man who solicits prostitutes, who lived with a prostitute for 10 years, who had a baby by a prostitute, this man was in charge of the investigation of the deaths of these prostitutes. And there was a cover-up accordingly. Somebody's got to bring this out and talk about this. These are truths. I represented some of those prostitutes, so I know very well what I'm talking about when I tell you that. This was a cover-up. Now maybe the ghost of Jimmy Burke is gone. Let's hope. And that the police will do the right thing starting today. Well, they've already done the wrong thing because they've refused to allow me to attend their press conference, when I was the one that was supposed to be cooperating with Lieutenant Byra. So now, I think I've told you everything that I can think of that's important here, and I'll open it up to questions and be glad to answer.
So are you 100% certain that the tapes are what they're going to play today?
I can't be 100% certain that they will play the tapes. It's a guess based on the release that they put out. They said that they were going to deliver to the public evidence that already exists. What else could it be? If it's not the tapes, then my God, what are they doing? If they say they're cooperating and they want the public to have investigative information, they have to give up the tapes. What else is there?
And what do you believe Shannon said on the tape? Do you think she named names, and is that why
The-
it's not been released?
The problem with the entire approach on the tapes is this. If there's nothing of value on those tapes, if it's merely Shannon's voice saying nothing of any significance that we don't already know from the investigation, then there can't be a reason why, for 9 years, they have resisted and refused to give up those tapes. It's impossible.
What do you speculate the reason is?
Well, the reason could be that somebody tampered with those tapes, and they didn't want us to have it accordingly. The reason could be that they lost the tapes and found them again. The reason could be, in other words, the tainted evidence. The reason could be that there's something on there that they didn't want you and I to know. What could that be? Another voice, perhaps? Something else. But remember this, the police did not tell the truth about what was on that tape when they revealed some of it. They had a detective named Vincent Steffen who was on the case when the tapes were first acquired by the police. And he wrote to me, and then he published the letter he wrote to me in Newsday, that on the tapes, Shannon was completely calm during the tapes, and that there was nothing wrong, basically, with what was going on there when she made the tape. That is exactly the opposite of what the medical examiner for Suffolk County told me and Shannon's family when we went to the autopsy meeting some years ago. They told us that Shannon was excited, that there was a struggle, and that she said, "They're trying to kill me." It can't be both. And it's two Suffolk County officials directly contradicting one another on an important point. So you can speculate about what's on the tape. We don't know. But something's wrong with this picture. If they do give you the tapes, then I'm going to want to have them scientifically tested to see what the quality of those tapes are and whether or not they've been tampered with. If they don't give you the tapes, then you need to demand to know why.
Now, what was the reason in court that the police department was saying that they didn't want to hand the tapes over?
The police department claimed in court, in writing, in the papers that I have right here, in an affidavit by Detective Pat Portella, in charge of the investigation, that the tapes were part of an ongoing active homicide investigation. And I'm sorry if I knocked somebody down.
Oh.
You got it, Jimmy?
That one.
That one too, yeah. All right. You guys want to, I think they're up here, right? Okay. I'll try it again, okay? Detective Pat Portella, in charge of the homicide investigation, swore under oath that the tapes were part of an ongoing active criminal investigation and therefore could not be released. He swore that under oath, but that wasn't true. So what is true is that there was no investigation. Witness after witness after witness from Oak Beach, who I interviewed, who were part of this entire affair, were never interviewed by the Suffolk County Police Department. That included members of Peter Hackett's own family who were intricately involved not only with Mr. Hackett, Dr. Hackett, but also with the people whose doors were knocked on, Gus Coletti and Barbara Brennan, on the night that Shannon disappeared. They were never even interviewed. There was a critical witness who was supposedly saw Shannon walking to Mrs. Brennan's house or away from it on the morning she disappeared. This fellow was a heroin addict who was arrested in Pennsylvania. The police never went to question him while they had him under arrest. They had him under their thumb. They ignored him completely, and to this day, they've never interviewed him.
Mr. Wright, has the police department been transparent with you about what their investigation has entailed? They have interviewed what they have done as part of the investigation that they say they've done?
The police have never told me or my team a thing about what they're doing. They have a right to be like that. I don't dispute that.
So
You know, I'm a civil lawyer.
So when you say that these people haven't been interviewed, you're hearing this from the police department?
These people were never interviewed by the Suffolk County Police Department. All these important witnesses. There's a witness who was also a client of mine in another case who actually knew personally Shannon Gilbert and was close with Shannon Gilbert in the weeks before she disappeared. And there are emails back and forth between them, texts and the like. And the police have never interviewed this girl and have never acquired those emails and those texts. This is remarkable that this could be so under these circumstances. None of these people were interviewed. So
why do you think Jimmy Burke interfered or dragged this investigation or did a incomplete or completely non-existent investigation?
there are all kinds of inferences that can be drawn about why Chief Burke suppressed this investigation. One thing that is clear about Chief Burke, he was a solicitor of and a dilettante of prostitutes. His girlfriend that lived with him for 10 years ran a prostitution ring out of his home on a beeper. Mr. Burke, with Loretta Rickenbacker, had a daughter. She was an African-American prostitute. All of this went on during the time that he was climbing the ranks in the police department. God only knows how that could happen. And while he eventually then became in charge of an investigation of the deaths of at least 5 of these people were known prostitutes out of the 11 who were found. So, you know, ask yourself, shouldn't that be looked at? Shouldn't that have been thoroughly investigated and explained by the police department in 9 years while this thing sat, this investigation, and nothing came of it? That's very bothersome, isn't it?
Do you know of any links between those murdered and the woman you say was Burke's girlfriend?
I know of a link between a girl who was not a prostitute, but was a friend of Shannon Gilbert's. And that witness also was aware that Shannon, unlike what the police had said, had a presence on Long Island. She was not unfamiliar with Long Island, as was thought, that she wandered out and got lost somewhere and had no idea where she was and so on. She was a familiar on Long Island. She had clients or customers on Long Island, some of them very wealthy men, one of them in Kings Park, another one out in Amagansett, I believe is where it was, and he was a landscaping wholesaler, and his name was Bissett. And Mr. Bissett is dead. He committed suicide. But he was, according to this other witness, one of Shannon's clients. That has never been investigated by the Suffolk County Police Department. That witness has never been spoken to. Stunning.
Thank you.
All right. All right.